Why did that just make most of us feel a little off, tensed up? Some people are so sensitive to the tritone that it actually creates an auditory illusion. Not hallucination, just the inability to tell whether the note is going up or down. Sometimes that causes a little vertigo or confusion. But why? I didn't threaten you. I just played 2 notes on a piano. For a long time, musicians have referred to this as Diabolus in Musica, or the devil in music. If you search for it online, you're going to come across all kinds of stories about how the Catholic Church banned it in the Middle Ages because it summoned Satan. Edicts, excommunication, composers getting imprisoned for playing it. Every single person who heard that story believed it, because when you hear this sound, it's easy to believe that something evil just walked into the room. But if the church never actually banned it, there's no law, there's no trial transcripts from the Middle Ages, then why can't we stop calling it the devil's interval? I'm going to tell you the story of 3 men separated by centuries and continents who all heard the same sound, and each one of them had a different demon. Tartini was a violinist in Venice. He was a very young, sparky, 21-year-old guy. Very talented, but not quite a genius. Not yet, and it was eating him alive. Every night he played and practiced until his fingers were bleeding. Every night he listened to the masters, and he would just know he was not good enough. The gap between what he could play and what he could hear in his own head was just this open wound. One night in 1713, he fell asleep and he had a dream. In the dream, a figure appeared at the foot of his bed. He didn't need to ask who that was. You always know in your dreams. It was the devil, of course. The Prince of Lies. The original separator of souls from bodies. And Tartini, in his dream, did what all desperate artists always do. He made a deal. Make me the greatest violinist who ever lived. Okay, the devil said. Let me show you what greatness sounds like. Tartini handed over his violin. The devil took it. He raised his bow into the air. The sound that came out wasn't music. It was every perfect thing Tartini always failed to play. It was everything woven together in something so beautifully impossible that Tartini forgot how to breathe. The notes cascaded and spiraled. They bent the air in half. Every trill was something more intricate than human fingers should be able to play. The devil played things that shouldn't exist, intervals that clawed at each other, dissonances that somehow resolved into this crystalline perfection. And in the middle of it all, grinding like a blade against stone, the tritone. Over and over, that destabilizing, grinding sound. The exact mathematics of wrong. Tartini woke up gasping, drowning on air. His hands were shaking so hard he could barely grab his violin. He had to capture it before it dissolved away back into the dream world. So he spent hours. The sun came up. His fingers were cramping. The notes poured out, and they were good. They were the best thing he'd ever written. But every time he played it back, something was missing. He called it the Devil's Trill Sonata. And for the rest of his life, 50 more years of composing, for playing for kings and popes. He'd tell everybody who ever asked, this is my best work, but it's still nothing compared to what I heard. The tritone for Tartini was the sound of the void, the unbridgeable distance from what he could imagine to what he could create. It was the sound of his own inadequacy. Now let me tell you about revenge. Hector Berlioz was 27 years old when he first saw Harriet Smithson. She was on stage in Paris, She was an actress from Ireland performing Shakespeare. He watched her play Ophelia, mad, drowning, tragic, and he fell so in love that his brain actually broke. He wrote her letters, passionate, obsessive letters. "You are my muse. You're my destiny. Marry me." She didn't respond. So he wrote her more letters, showed up at her performances. He sent poetry, gifts, declarations. She didn't respond. She wasn't playing hard to get. She literally didn't want anything to do with this guy. She found him frightening. So what does a romantic composer do when the woman he's built his entire identity around rejects him? He takes opium. A lot of it. And he writes a symphony about his own death. Symphonie Fantastique, an episode in the life of an artist. And the artist is Berlioz. And in the symphony, he's at his own funeral. Except he's not dead. He's been drugged, buried alive, and now he's hallucinating. The fifth movement is called Dream of a Witch's Sabbath. You're in your coffin, you can't move. All around you, witches and demons are gathered for a black mass. They're dancing, they're celebrating. And the woman you loved, the woman who rejected you, she's there too, laughing. She's one of them now. She's monstrous, cackling, transformed. And then Berlioz does something unforgivable. He takes the Dies Irae, the sacred, ancient Catholic chant, this holy piece sang at funerals for over 1,000 years, day of wrath, day of judgment, and he defiles it. He twists it. He harmonizes that holy melody with ugly, shrieking, grinding tritones over and over. The devil's interval wrapping around the prayer for the dead like barbed wire. It was psychological warfare. He was taking something sacred and destroying it. Just like his perfect image of Harriet had been destroyed. This pristine vision he'd built up in his head, putting this woman on a pedestal, ruined by the reality that she was just a human who didn't want him. The tritone for Berlioz was the sound of desecration, the sound of his own heart turning rotten. Now, forget the dreams, forget the operas. Let's talk about a factory in Birmingham, England. 1965. The world has changed. 2 world wars have happened. Mechanized slaughter, factories churning out bullets and tanks. The romantic era is over. We don't have time for dreams anymore. We have shift work. Tony Iommi was 17 years old, working in a sheet metal factory. It was his last day on the job before he was supposed to go full-time as a guitarist. He'd been playing in bands around Birmingham. He was there. He was good. He had a future. Last day, then he was out. He was working a machine press, really heavy industrial equipment, the kind that stamps metal into place with thousands of pounds of pressure, and something went wrong. The press came down on his right hand, sliced off the tips of his middle and ring fingers. The doctors told him, "You're done. You'll never play again." But Tony didn't accept that. He went home and he melted down detergent bottles. He molded them into little caps, little prosthetic fingertips. He glued leather on top of all that for grip, and he picked up his guitar. It was agony. His fingertips were gone. The plastic caps pressed into the nerve endings. He couldn't grip the strings hard enough. Standard tuning was impossible. So he detuned, dropping the tuning way, way down. It made the strings loose and floppy so his hand could press them. And when he played those loose, rattling strings, when he pressed down with plastic-capped fingers, he hit a tritone. That sound, low, mechanical, grinding, it became the foundation for the first Black Sabbath song. And that song became the epitome of heavy metal. Tony didn't use the tritone because it was creative or spooky. He used it because it sounded like the machine that tried to break him. It sounded like the factory, the gray industrial city, grinding gears, the violence of metal on metal. The tritone for Iommi was survival. It was the sound of refusing to die. So, 3 men, 3 demons. They all had something in common. They were all 3 hearing the tritone. When you play 2 notes together, they create sound waves that travel through the air. If the notes are harmonious, like a major chord, the waves line up really neatly. Your ear processes that as pleasant. The tritone sits at the exact middle of the octave. Its frequency is 1 to the square root of 2, an irrational number. The math is chaos. So when you play it, the sound waves don't line up. They crash into each other. If you could see these sound waves in the air, they would look like a violent ocean. Acousticians call this acoustic roughness. Your auditory cortex, the part of your brain that processes sound, it short circuits, sort of, trying to make sense of that chaos. And then your brain interprets that roughness as tension, physical tension, danger. You've just responded physically to the invisible chaos in the universe without seeing anything. Even people in remote tribes in New Guinea, people who have never heard Western music, when they hear the tritone, they instantly recognize it as unstable, threatening. It's not cultural, it's biological. The tritone is like a glitch in our operating system. It shows you what's underneath. When Tartini heard the tritone, his brain's response to that acoustic roughness got all tangled up with his feelings of inadequacy. The tension of the sound became the tension that was in his soul. When Berlioz heard it, that biological discomfort became a mirror for the psychological discomfort, those feelings of rejection. The intervals sounded like his own growing resentment. When Iommi heard it, the waveforms matched the chaos of his life, the industrial violence, the physical trauma. The tritone is a mirror. It doesn't summon demons. It reveals ours. It's the sound of the crack between worlds, the friction of who we are and who we want to be, between what we have and what we've lost, between that safety and everything that we can't control. For 1,000 years, we've been telling stories about this sound. We called it the devil. We called it evil, forbidden. But it was never about the devil. It was about us. The tritone is the sound of being human. And maybe that's why we can't stop listening to it. Let me play it one more time. Now what do you hear?